Hello and welcome to my monthly update. In this update, I will look at the reactions to some of President Trump's moves in the Russian media, specifically on TASS and Kommersant. Then I will touch on the results of the opinion polls conducted by the Levada Center. Let's talk about President Trump, or as I like to say, the Trump-ageddon. The Trump-ageddon has begun, and the Trumpaites are shaking the tree. And my reading of the articles on TASS and Kommersant is that Russia is somewhat baffled. The Kremlin spokesman Peskov has gone from stating that we are not talking to the Trump's team to, well, yes, we are sort of talking, and finally, peace talks take time. Officially, the Russian terms for peace have not changed yet. Trump's press conference with Netanyahu made the rounds in Russia as well. As media have let me down in the past when it comes to the Trump, I watched the whole thing. By the way, contrary to what you may have heard, don't be in a hurry to book a holiday in the Gaza Riviera. The term Riviera is a press invention. The word was never used in the press conference. But reinventing Gaza as a sort of economic free trade zone was just one of the many jaw-dropping moments in that press conference. In my personal opinion, it is part of a strategy. Let people run around screaming in outrage, then present the actual plans, and proposals that may have sounded impossible previously may suddenly appear doable. Who knows? Trump was quite firm on Iran. Iran is a Russian ally. But the Russian response to Trump's promise to annihilate Iran's economy if it doesn't change its ways was a bit muted. My interpretation is that there is a bit of wait-and-see approach, and the Russia-Iran alliance has always been colored by the long-standing strategy of frustrating the US ambitions in the region. As Stalin put it in the late 40s, let's put the cat among the pigeons. But the Trump-ageddon is not slowing down, and next came the sanctions on the International Criminal Court, the ICC. And oh boy, although I have not been comfortable with the whiff of political meddling hovering around some of the court's decisions, reading through the executive order was another jaw-dropper. If I read it right, in short, the US may block property and assets of the ICC in the US, suspend entry for ICC officials, employees and agents, as well as their immediate family members, and prohibits any kind of sponsorship of the ICC. The official reaction in Russia was rather cool, especially considering that the ICC issued an arrest warrant for President Putin, which, by the by, in my opinion, made things even more difficult, as like it or not, the EU and the US need to be able to freely talk to Russia, even if such talks may end up being rather fruitless. Then there was USAID in the crossfire. That caused a bit of jumping up and down, but I use Marco Rubio's interview to put that one into perspective. Links below. American aid will flow in the directions that serve America's interests, according to the current administration. Nonetheless, I expect a very entertaining brown substance linking match coming to a screen near you. After all, the power, influence and wealth of many has been built on aid following well-established paths. But if Rubio is true to his words, I think that where the aid will go and where it will stop flowing to will signal the borders of the re-emerging multipolar world, where the other two superpowers will be China and Russia. And looking at the US aid waste making the headlines, I think you can see emerging the new borders of this multipolar world. Let's talk about one of the projects currently under review. $1.5 million has been allocated to a diversity project in Serbia. Now let's have some background. The president of Serbia, Aleksandar Vučić, metaphorically speaking of course, during the pandemic gave the finger to the EU and made his fondness for China very clear. Then, at the beginning of the war in Ukraine, he definitely began to wiggle the Kremlin way. There have been a number of protests against the government in Serbia over the past few years. Many Serbians feel that the government is not acting in their best interest. More recently, some thought that corruption was behind a botched repair job at the train station in Novi Sad that killed 15 people. Now, let's be clear. Serbians protest because they are angry, but protests and general strikes cost money. And totally coincidentally, there is a diversity project with $1.5 million to spend. And let me tell you that $1.5 million buys you a lot of Serbian dinars. And I guess a very extensive diversity program. Who knows? I would, however, suggest, in my humble opinion, that if the diversity project is not reanimated or recreated under a different name, it may mean that America's new areas of interest do not include Serbia. Just an opinion, of course. A rather interesting case is the United States of America against Mahmoud al-Hafyan, also known as Abu Abdul al-Homsi. The complaint is that al-Homsi channeled USAID earmarked for Syrians to terrorist groups between 2015 and 2018. One of the recipients was HTS. HTS was considered an Al-Qaeda affiliated group. HTS leader declared the group as a separate entity depending on sources in 2016 or 2017. HTS leader reputedly always considered Iran an enemy and fought against IS and its allies in the region. And I am telling you this because HTS leader is Ahmed Hussein al-Sharaa, aka Abu Muhammad al-Julian, the man that led the offensive that put an end to the Assad regime in Syria, and is now the interim president of Syria. Al-Julian's agenda as interim president is to bring peace, democracy, stability, and prosperity to Syria, and stopping Iran from messing up the country. Anyway, the above are only opinions. Links to my sources in the description below. But the Trump-ageddon is not slowing down, so much so that meetings with Japan Prime Minister confirmed Japan as a strong ally, while aid to South Africa has been stopped on grounds of discrimination, forced expropriation of land and businesses, and aggressive stance against the US and its allies, specifically Israel, and making friends with Iran. Coincidentally, South Africa has also been moving closer to both Russia and China in recent years. And I am sure by the time I publish this video, more outrage will make the headlines. But for now, let's have a look at the mood among the people of Russia. Although the monthly numbers remain at the usual levels with regards to approval ratings of the president, the government, and in how the country is being run, additional surveys show that the Russian public are bracing themselves for a difficult year ahead. In this survey, about 42% of respondents are concerned about an economic crisis. Inflation has been running above target levels. It was just above 8% in 2024, and for January of this year, it's expected to be between 9.92 and 9.95%. Beside the economic worries, 34% of the respondents are worried about war with the USA and/or NATO. In another survey, the most concerning events of 2024 are the price hikes, cost of living linked to high inflation, and that chimes with the worries of a looming major economic crisis, followed by the war in Ukraine, possible conflict with NATO, and the sanctions. That's it for this month. Thank you for watching. If you found the video interesting, please consider putting a like and subscribing to the channel. It would be much appreciated. All the best and have a good month. Bye bye.